how do you maximize your existing data? So the service I'm going to talk about is called Append, and appending allows you to basically append or add an email address to your postal address. So traditionally before email was around, everybody used direct mail to communicate with clients, and that cost has been reduced over time, but it's still a very expensive process. And just as with any marketing campaign, email, you will have some clients who are responsive, some clients who are less responsive. There's a certain amount of attrition. One challenge with direct mail is it's very difficult to keep track of all those statistics. So by adding an email address to an existing postal address, you're really able to kind of augment or even extend that engagement into digital space. So, for example, if you typically are maybe a catalog company and you're mailing your clients on a quarterly basis, by having an email address, you can do a number of different things. Like, for example, you can supplement the quarterly mailings with email marketing campaigns to drive additional revenue. We've seen some companies that they've seen such a high level of success by using email. They'll still maintain the traditional catalog, but they may reduce the mailings to maybe biannually or annually, and the rest of the year they'll use either smaller postcards, but primarily use email because it gives you a number of things. First of all, if you take a typical direct mail piece, I mean, it can cost anywhere from 20 to 5 cents to mail out, depending on size and format. Now, given the time that is going to reach the client, and then once it kind of has left, it's very, very difficult to get really clear visibility into what happens after that process. With email, deliverability is instant. Your cost is maybe 100th of what it costs to send a direct mail piece, and you're able to very accurately track results. Also, because of the frequency and the speed with which email marketing campaigns can be deployed, even if you take, for example, a small piece of your direct mail budget and reallocate it to email, within number of a few campaigns, you already started generating revenue that you can fund your future digital marketing and then put that money back into direct marketing. So really, it's a very effective tool to very quickly increase revenue, at the same time have very, very clear visibility into what you're doing, so you can, I guess, more aggressively react to your customers' needs or their preferences, whereas with direct mail, that can take months to achieve the same results. So again, the process that we go through is we take your postal file, we clean and standardize it, then we match it against our proprietary opt-in database of about 1 billion records. These have been carefully vetted. They're licensed partner databases. Then we run the list again through Safe to Send to make sure that there's nothing in that list that has any sort of toxic or bad email addresses that are going to cause deliverability issues. And then we return the updated file to the client, and basically this guarantees that typically up to 35% of your list can now be communicated with by email. So again, the process, if you take a step back and look at what it looks like, is again, we start with a postal, we match it against a database, we clean the email address through Safe to Send. Again, FreshAddress handles the opt-in email, which is again an absolutely critical piece of that process, because you want to make sure that any email address you communicate to has been opted in. In other words, that person has given you permission to communicate with them. And again, I would say the opt-out, you should expect it to be right around the 2% range. Once we get the results back, we clean it through Safe to Send, and then basically you get a 100% deliverable clean list that you can use to augment your standard email campaigns. One of the things that we've seen from experience, is how do you, creatively combine kind of the direct marketing and the digital experience. And what we've seen is some clients, what they'll do is they'll send an email a few days before the actual marketing piece is delivered to the client with an actual physical picture of what's expected in the mail. Then they get the marketing piece, and then they will follow up with an email roughly maybe a few days after that. And we've seen typically a 17% lift, which is quite significant by combining the two different channels. So that's just one example of how it can be used. Timeline, again, it's about 15 days, but we recommend, given foreseen circumstances, that people would plan for about a month, just to make sure that everything gets done correctly. We're not rushing. So we do project initiation, we QC the file, then we make sure that the client is aware of kind of our process by weekly updates. We send confirmation once the file has been QC'd. We do assembly and then go through the process until we have results that we return to the client. And just to kind of make sure you understand that in both cases, whether you're doing an ECOA project or you're running an Append, there's going to be a project manager that will be assigned to the project who will basically handhold you through the entire process, and also give you advice on, for example, you may want to know, well, what's a good permission message look like? We have a full library of examples that we basically make available to clients as a resource. So again, if you've never done ECOA and Append, we assign somebody who will basically kind of advise you and best practice and guide you through the entire process. Here's an example of a project we did with our partner WhatCounts. The client is Costco, and they did an email append. You can see that their input file was slightly over 21 million records, and the match rate in their case was 17.7%, which basically resulted in a file return of almost 4 million records. And again, these are 100% accurate and deliverable email addresses. So you can see that, in this specific case, they had a specific offer. It was very clear to the client. But as I recall, the return was somewhere between 3 and 6x on the investment in this project. So, and again, this is, when you're considering, do I need to do an Append project, or is it worthwhile? Do I need to do an ECOA project? My advice is look at, what is your typical cost of email acquisition? Look at what is the lifetime value of an email address, because in either case, whether you're doing a Append project or an ECOA project, the per match cost is pennies. So, unless you're, selling something, a very, very inexpensive product or service, I really can't think of any scenario where doing both an Append and an ECOA project wouldn't make sense. Here's some additional examples of what Costco used to basically incentivize the people that are reaching out for the first time by email to engage with them. One thing I wanted to add that we talked about earlier, I think Juan talked about social media. One of the kind of unique uses of the ECOA technology is a lot of times when people sign up for Facebook, they may use an older email address that they don't currently use. So there is a kind of a subset service on the ECOA that actually allows you to find that old email address that the client used to sign up for Facebook, and allows you to engage with them, and basically typically increases your custom audience file for Facebook by about 20 to 30%. So there's different ways to use technologies, but overall, I would say the important thing to understand is, know your cost of email acquisition, know your value of an email address, and that'll help you kind of understand and come up with an ROI for Append and ECOA projects.